our Rishi Munis were just, they were using it as a part of control of the body and control of the mind. And when you look at nowadays in the current scenario, right, for the young generation, when there are a lot of, right, life is full of, that lot of things are to do. And the young generation, they need that how to control their mind, how to control their body, and how to make it flexible, right? That is very important. That is one thing when we talk about the stress from the education, stress from the multiple kind of activity, and then yoga, once they do it, right, for an hour, either in the morning or in an evening, I think it gives a complete relaxation. And that's why when you talk about whether it is an anatomy, if you talk about the physiology, or if you talk about psychology, for all point of view, the yoga is important. Now the question comes that why, right, yoga creates this kind of, right, relaxation of the body. Why or in what way the yoga reduces the blood pressure, in what way it is helpful for the diabetic patient, it is in what way it is good for the heart. There are many things which are scientifically to be studied, and I'm sure that Mr. Jeffrey and his team, they will just explain certain points in terms of the science of yoga, and several the coming lecture will include all these things. So when we talk about the scientific validation, although I think these are already proven, and already a lot of things have been done with the concept of science of yoga. But even then, when we talk about, right, the something which is related to, right, the concept of science and in what way it helps, then I think medical science and yoga in all ways, when you talk about, right, whether it is the Ayurveda or it is the kind of, right, your homeopathy, or it is the kind of when you talk about the other kind of the medical science, then yoga had become as a part of that also. So for every, I think whether it is healthy or for a patient, I think if they just take, right, certain kind of yoga, the body gets, I think, a faster recovery, and that is where the science of yoga becomes important. So I will not take much time. I just, I think would like to listen to Professor Jeffrey, and that's what the series of the lectures. So I wish the entire team of IKS to, right, take a lead and continue these kind of programs in future also, because it will be required, right, throughout the year. And I think it is a kind of stress buster also. It is a kind of relaxation approach also. And when we talk about the control of the body and control of the soul, I think yoga is very important for that day. And that's why the International Yoga Day on 21st June has been celebrated, or it has worldwide more than 170 countries have just taken it as a kind of exercise also, as a kind of part of their routine day program activity. So thank you very much. And I think namaskar and Jai Hind to everyone. So over to you, Shoham.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Now I wish to welcome our esteemed speaker. He is already an internationally renowned speaker on Vedic sciences. But for those who are new to him, I am just giving a brief bio. Jeffrey Armstrong is the founder of Vasa Vedic Academy of Sciences and Arts, which is an online educational institute that offers a large curriculum of ancient wisdom for modern times. He is a relationship expert, philosopher, practitioner, and teacher of the Vedas for over 40 years. He interweaves yoga philosophy, Sanatana Dharma, Ayurveda, Jyotish, Veda and Tantra, and Western psychology. Prior to his teaching, he had a successful career as an executive in Silicon Valley and spent 5 years in an ashram as a brahmacharya. He is a sought-after guest expert on TV and talk radio. He is an international speaker on Vedic Sanatana Dharma and is considered one of the foremost authorities on Vedic knowledge and its relevance to contemporary spirituality. Jeffrey was recently awarded the ICCR Distinguished Indologist Award in 2021 by the Government of India and is the author of the decolonized Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive. He received the Canadian Hindu Chambers of Commerce Lifetime Achievement Award in 2022 for his immense contribution. I now hand over this session to our esteemed speaker, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, you can begin your lecture.
Namaste, and thank you, Mr. Chakrabarti, and to everyone present, pranams. It's an honor to be here with you today. And to Professor Pant, who is acting as the Acharya in residence and having the courage and broad-minded vision to take education to where it's supposed to take us, which is to a true understanding of who we are, of who is being educated. And you can see that this is the moment in history with Narendra Modi in Central Park in New York on Yoga Day, with him present speaking to America and encouraging the country to step up to the next level of democracy, which is to truly understand who are these individuals we've been talking about. And this is the theme of yoga. Yoga is about us, about who we are. But before I say another word, I need to say, Omagana Timiranda Syagaran Salakayam, Chakrurun Militam Genatasmai, Shri Gurave Namaha. What I'm able to say about this subject is the grace of the gurus that I have had. Ramanath Sharma, who was a Pandit of Sanskritam, he was a Benares Pandit who knew all 4,000 grammatical rules of the Ashtadhyayi Panini by heart. So he would say something in Sanskrit, he'll say rule number 2,221, if this, then this, and this. I learned what Pandit is. I'm not a Pandit, I'm a wannabe. But I'm certainly the representative of the different aspects of Vedanta, of one of the Veda Angas, of Jyotish. And because of my academic background with degrees in psychology, comparative religion, history, literature, poetry, I am very pleased to see that the academic world, led at this appropriate moment in history by the Vedic culture, is now bringing yoga into the curriculum. So this is the real revolution right now. But let me put it in existential terms, that we have not been told who we are in a one lifetime worldview. This is the background, the backdrop in front of which yoga is coming forward. Because we have not been allowed to ask the question, who am I, in academia, because they would say, no, that's religion. We can't answer that question. And science says, we don't have an interest in that question. We're going to define you in terms of the categories of matter. And none of them knew that they were just repeating fragments of the Sanskrit, of the Sanskritam, of the knowledge of Bharat that had been colonized. And so this all begins with the colonial era, doesn't it? Which I just need to say briefly was instigated by the Pope. Because the Pope said, I want you all to go out there and discover the world. But by discover, he meant go everywhere, force everyone to be Christian, and steal everything that they have. That was instigated by the most important religion of the time. Now, this is not to say anything disrespectful to those practitioners of that tradition now, but I need to start there to say what happened to bring us where we are. where I am as the recipient of the Vedic culture, and where you are as the academia, the IIT, that is standing up to the next level. I like to make aphorisms and sayings, so I would like to say that you're going from IITians to II-Titans. You're all standing up to your full height. You're showing the world that Acharya teaches by personal example and personal conduct. So first of all, I'm greatly honored to be here and to participate in this Vedic Renaissance. And we're all now have an opportunity to become ambassadors of something. But because I had a Benares Pandit as one of my gurus, I know that the root of the tree is Sanskritam. It is the perfected language. We cannot really talk about yoga without talking about Sanskrit, because otherwise we'll try to use English to describe yoga, but we can't, because English can't do it, not without Sanskrit. So this is coming in from the outside. This is where I learned that my English vocabulary could not talk about Brahman, could not talk about Atma, could not talk about Ritam, could not talk about all of the things that exist as Sanskrit words, about prakriti, about what really prakriti is, and that we're jiva atmas, and that we're here because we're here for a learning experience. So I call the cosmos, the universe, the university. It's the universe, uni versus iti. So the goal of yoga is for each individual to wake up and remember that they are an immortal being, an Atma, on a journey here in Prakriti. And this definition is only possible using the Sanskrit vocabulary. So with that as an introduction, would you like me to proceed, or would you like to ask some Q&A?
You can proceed. There is no Q&A right now.
All right.
I would also like to tell the attendees here that they have the option to ask some questions to Jeffrey, and they can exercise the option of the Q&A and write some questions there. You can proceed, Jeffrey.
All right. So because I started with colonization, it's because recently I've been, over the last 10 years, realizing that the English language as a international language of objects, talking about objects, is useful. Indeed, I use it. But there's something missing in English that has been prevented and kept out of it by the history that I just briefly mentioned. And that is words of meaning who contradict either the two modern religions, which are modern science and modern one lifetime religion. So that's why I like to start the conversation, that the dominant thinking of our planet for the last 100 or so years, since colonialism officially ended, though it hasn't, it's now called entrepreneurial activity, taking things from all over the world. But since this shift has now happened, here's the way I like to say it. During colonization, the British went to India and stole Lakshmi wherever they could get her and took her back to their country. But they didn't know that Vishnu goes where Lakshmi goes. And so, since Lakshmi went to where the English were, so did Vishnu. And this is where, what do we see throughout the world over the last 20 years? Hundreds of millions of yoga practitioners. And who's leading us forward in that yoga practice? The females of Western civilization and the rest of the world, whose existence has not been properly explained by their worldview, by science or religion. There's only one lifetime, and the female is not really necessary. That's the worldview. That's why they had to fight to get the vote. That's why they had to fight to own property. And what's all this got to do with yoga? Well, it's got to do with who we really are and with the nature of the world that we're surrounded by. And with the most important premise, which is that aham brahmasmi. I'm an immortal being who cannot die. That's the starting point. That's not the ending yet. But that's where the yoga conversation actually begins. Who am I? Why am I here? Why was I born? What are my options? What can I do? What is in my best interest? Where am I from ultimately? Where am I going ultimately? Brahmabhuta prasanatma, nasochati, nakankshati, samasarveshu bhuteshu. So what do we do to behave within the temporary realm of, and now we need a Sanskrit word, prakriti. Of prakriti. Who are we? We're an atma. We're from where? Brahman. And we're what? Visiting the realm of prakriti. For how long? As long as it takes, until we are finished. And then what do? Oh, we achieve moksha. We've completely learned all that is to be learned. And now we say aham brahmasmi, jivara svarupaya nityar Krishna das. So now we're ready for the 4 kinds of yoga. But yoga at its foundation, all yoga, has these foundational principles. We are jiva atmas, visiting the realm of prakriti. We're here temporarily, but as long as we want to stay, we will indeed stay. We stay here propelling ourselves forward by the cause and effect from our actions. So we need another Sanskrit word, the ritam. Before we can talk about science, we have to talk about the ritam. We have to talk about the fact that the universe is already constructed intelligently. And we have to discuss that intelligent construction. So the first yoga is the yoga of Ashtanga, because we're embodying. And this is where yoga, it was no irony, no small irony that the females took to yoga and set the example as acharya to the whole world, because their body is more complicated. So the Ashtanga yoga is designed to help us land in a human body, and it's supposed to begin as soon as we're old enough to practice it at the Gurukula. The Gurukula is supposed to teach us how to embody, how to be in the body and work with it professionally. The irony of our world is there's hardly any human beings in the world who are adequately and professionally embodied. They weren't taught how to. There was no user's manual. Yogas chit vritti nirodha. What does that mean? Yoga is not getting twisted by the cyclic nature of prakriti, and it's learning to live within prakriti without being drowned by it and made unconscious by it. So Ashtanga yoga is the various departments of embodiment being learned professionally, starting at a very young age, so that by the time we're in our adult body, we've already been being instructed on how to inhabit what is our, what's the Sanskrit for it? Karana. What's the English for it? Car. So what happened for me was this process, as it continued, became a process of linguistics, because I could see that English had been used to colonize the world, to rob it and to take everything. Then it was imposed. Macaulay, I call it Macaulayization. I'm sure you're aware of my reference. So Macaulay said, don't teach Sanskrit anymore in the universities or Arabic. Stop educating them in these useless sciences. And to quote Macaulay, you could take a small bookshelf of English texts and have more important knowledge than the entire library of the country of India. Oh, really? Well, it turns out he didn't want to understand. So Macaulayization took place, and this is what brings us to the next steps of yoga. Because first of all, one lifetime persons from the cultures that only believe in one lifetime do not have a process of embodiment, because they don't have a perspective that sees Mahatma, long view. They're Duratma. One lifetime is all we have to explain. And we don't have to explain it, we just have to exploit it. And that's why science was used to exploit, not to explain. Only to explain how to exploit. Not to ask the existential question, who are we? Because they already assumed that that was in the domain of the Catholic Church. And this is the battle that was waged in Western civilization and still remains. But this has not been the situation for Bharat. So there's one more thing that we need to say about yoga before we can go forward, and that is Sanskrit, Samskritam, not only means the perfected language, but it's less often called by its probably most important name after being perfect, the perfect programming language, and that is Devanagari. It's the city of the Devas and Devis. In other words, it's the place of contact with all the other intelligences in the universe we're in and beyond it. That's what Sanskrit is actually for. It is the vibratory connection to that which is beyond our sight here within Prakriti. So yoga is getting us properly embodied so the chaos of embodiment can be brought to this place, to balance, to sattva. So we're taken from tamasic, not understanding, to rajasic, it's all about me, to sattva, understand how to be in harmony with the laws of nature and the beings around you, which is the ritam, is it not? And isn't the ritam, the ri in ritam, the kri in karma, and the dri in dharma? So what is dharma? Dri. It's obeying the ritam. It's adhering to the laws of nature. But science only wanted the laws of nature it could manipulate. It didn't want to understand ultimately who we are. So you see, the almost incurable disease of just one lifetime is what plagues modern science, modern Abrahamic religions, and the rest of the world. They're trapped in a one lifetime paradigm. So yoga removes those handcuffs and ankle cuffs with asanas and pranayam and a variety of practices with a hum brahmasmi. And now we're ready for the next yoga, which is, isn't it? Samkhya. Now we say, Prathamam Vakratundam cha ekadantam ditiyakam. Now we start talking to Ganesha, Gana Isha. We're talking to an Isha. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita magradakasya svidanam. Wait a minute, what are you saying? Well, I'm saying that the universe, that this jagat isn't just happening. It's just not an explosion. It's not some kind of accident. And it's not made by a distant deity who won't talk to us again. It's run by devas and devis. It's run by conscious department heads. Show me a university without department heads. Show me a universe without department heads. This is yoga. This is the understanding of the situation from an existential perspective. So we know who we are, and we also understand the departments that are surrounding us that make life as we now are experiencing it possible. Prakriti, iti, of the ritam, again and again and again and again and again. And then if you're not careful, the orbiting of everything twists you and ties you in knots. So you have to learn to untwist those knots. Yogas, chit, vritti, nirodha, but the worst of them are here in the way we think. So the way we think is riding on top of our karana, in our antakarana. Without this vocabulary of Sanskrit words, there's no English to describe that. It doesn't mean the mind. It doesn't mean just the English word body. These are not adequate vocabulary. They're not professional vocabulary. They're amateur vocabulary. So is spiritual. You know what spiritual means? Look it up in an etymological dictionary. Spiritus, it means to breathe. Oh, okay. So spiritual means to breathe. So if someone tells me that I'm spiritual, I say, I'm glad you're breathing. Still don't know your worldview, though. Still don't know what you stand for. So in this next unfoldment, we're talking about devas, and what do we call the Sanskrit alphabet? Devanagari, I see. So they live there too. Right. So this language, which is perfect, is our methodology for connecting with the universal administration, with those beings who are administering the universe. But then is there something beyond that? And of course, this is also what is not described in religion. Yes, theoretically, practically speaking, no information whatsoever. None. This is what brought someone like myself. I was so-called educated, but I called it deducation, not education. It wasn't answering these questions. So mantra and yoga cannot be spoken of in any way except together. But now we're doing Samkhya, and we're now talking about these strange beings with an elephant head and a human body. And wait a minute, what car does he drive? He drives a mouse? You're kidding, right? And what is he? Well, he has two wives, as it turns out. Do I really mean wives? No, it's a metaphor. But that's the way it's said in the Veda. And who is he? The first child of who? Father and Mother Nature. They're talking to us. The rishis are telling us something in this Veda. Mother Nature, Father Nature. Oh yeah, Mother Nature, the one that the Abrahamic religions left out. Ah, so this is Shiva, Durga. And who's their first child? Gana Isha. Ah, the guardian, the protector. Now what else? The remover of obstacles to our understanding what's actually going around us and within us. And so who are his two Shaktis, Buddhi and Siddhi. Buddhi, is it not, is discernment of the laws of nature, of the Ritam. So all of this is part of Samkhya Yoga. And I have a little perception about this that I think you'll enjoy. So you see, the science behind that made technology possible. I worked for Apple Computer in Silicon Valley when the Apple II was just coming out. So I've watched the history of technology, saw it come about. And it was taken from technology that came from Samkhya as it existed in Bharat. It came from the original programming language, Sanskritam, not Latin, not Greek. And so science as we know it came forward that way. And finally, the computer was invented. But you know that the computer was originally from India, from the technology and knowledge and scientists coming from there. And how do we know that for sure? Well, because we have icons on our desktop, but aren't those icons pagan gods and goddesses? Yet we have icons on our desktop so that we can categorize all the departments of our knowledge. And Ganesha is in charge of computers because he's in charge of all of that. And how do we know that for sure? Because he rides a mouse. You know, Ganesha rides a mouse. So we're now supposed to use technology to improve the planet, not just exploit it. And that's what Narendra Modi said. This hasn't been said before to the whole world. And it's possible because of this technology and what we're doing. And so Samkhya Yoga, the domain of Ganesha, who's the remover of our obstacles, who rides a mouse, who's behind the technologies of the world and the ultimate programming language, Sanskrit. So this has taken us over into the territory from Ashtanga Yoga to Samkhya Yoga to Yad Yad Acharati Shreshtas Tad Evetaro Janaha Sayat Pramanam Kurute Lokas Tad Anuvartate. An Acharya teaches by personal example. Teaches what? Just the manipulation of matter? No, the discernment. So now Jnana Yoga, the discernment of what I am and what I am not. Na-iti, 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 na-iti. I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this. Isn't that the methodology of Samkhya? But now I want you to remember that playing in the background is something that no one talks much about yet. Because when yoga came to the West, it mostly came, ironically, as asana. Well, maybe not ironically, because all those females were improperly embodied, and the female form is more complicated. It's made to have babies and reproduce and do amazing things. It's the basis of nature. And so that Shakti needed Ashtanga to undo the damage of one lifetime Abrahamic religion and colonialism. And so they took to yoga. And now the knowledge component of yoga is now following the heels, the asanas. And that's the next stage that we're at right now in this Vedic Renaissance. So yoga is leading us to the next step, which is karma yoga. And this is exactly what Narendra Modi talked about. It's the next step in this process, because we got where we are by exploiting the world. We will only get to an important and useful place next. And this is directly from the leader of Bharat. We will only do that by cooperating with the laws of nature, paying attention to using science for cooperating with the Ritam. And that is the next step of yoga, isn't it? Karma yoga. How you act in the world, interacting with the gunas, being sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. But all of this is also connected via mantra. And mantra is going to lead us to the next step of yoga, from action in the world, from the first step of embodiment to the second step of learning and beginning to be able to understand and discriminate and discern, to the next step, which is to put that into action as your actions in the world, but not kurvan evaha karmani jivishekshatam samaha evam tvainanyate tosti na karma lipyate, not to go against the laws of nature, the devas and devis, to do your karma yoga accurately in terms of the ritam, the actual laws of nature. And this brings us to the fourth yoga. It's the one where you sing and you dance and you see beauty. It's bhakti. It's bhaj. It's emotions taken to their ultimate destination, along with all the other, which is the prerequisite to the last course in yoga. Ham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate iti madva bhajanti buddhabhava samanvita machchita madgata prana bodhyantak parasparam kathayantas jamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha tesham satata yuktanam. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Bhagavan, avatar of the ultimate and supreme being, says to us, I am the source of everything. From me, the entire creation flows. Knowing this is yoga. The wise adore me with all their hearts. Their thoughts dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered unto me. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. To those who are constantly devoted and adore me, this is the bhakti, with purest love, I give the understanding by which they may come to me. Out of compassion for them, I, who am dwelling within their heart, destroy the darkness born of ignorance with the shining lamp of Vedic Vidya, of knowledge. So these are the pathway of the yoga as a process. And the final one is the mantras, is the shastra, is the bhajan. Hari Haraya Namaha Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopala Govindaram Sri Madhu Sudan Giridhari Gopinatha Mahadana Mohan. It is the vibratory empowerment of Devanagari that introduces us to the laws of nature so we can work in harmony with them, in dharmony with them, so that we don't oppose them and generate negative situations on our planet, so that we reach the culmination of that, which is a state of sattva in which we show respect to every living entity, to every being on the planet, and help them to live properly in their habitat. We don't eat them, we greet them, and as far as possible, we do ahimsa, the least amount of harm. Now our yoga has gone to the stage of mature human emotions, perfected in a relationship with Sri Bhagavan, male and female, This is the pathway of yoga that the great acharyas have left for us. And this is Kali Yuga, exactly as Bhagavan said when giving the Bhagavad Gita. According to Nilesh Oak, who's tracked it through the astronomy in the Itihasa, Ramayana and Mahabharata, it's actually 7,000 years ago when Bhagavan appeared as avatar on the planet. Twice that when the Ramayana took place, 12 to 14,000, and up in the 20,000s for the Rig Vedic period. But the world hasn't recognized this yet because they've been small-minded, Duratma, one lifetime, that's it. This is the yogic revolution. The knowledge of Bharat and yoga is about to take us beyond that and to turn science back toward Mata Bhumi. And the last thing is, do you know that Bhumi gave us the word humus and human? We're not human beings. Let's use the Sanskrit. We're Bhumi beings. And with that, thank you very much for listening. We'll open for Q&A.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for your talk. And we have received some question and answers here for you. I will put them across to you. The first one says like this. Namaste, Jeffrey ji. A real honor and pleasure to be listening to you live. My question is based on the decolonizing of the Bhagavad Gita. Of the words that needed to be decolonized, which one was the most challenging? Why was it so? So question is, of the many different words that needed to be decolonized, which one was the most challenging and why?
That's the exact question that I alluded to at the beginning of my discussion. It's actually not just a single word, but if it was a single word, it's Bhagavan. And translating it God is very ironic. So the most ironic word and important is not to ever use the word God. The English word God came through German, and the word that went into German was in the Agnihotra Yajna. When the offering is put into the mouth of Agni and the smoke arises, that's called hutam. It appears 4 times in the Bhagavad Gita, the word hutam. That word hutam went into German and became gutam, went into Dutch as gut, and English and became God. The English word God means the smoke rising from a Vedic Agnihotra Yajna. It has no other meaning. Meaning is not what you say a word is. Meaning is the word's meaning. So the English word God is the mispronunciation of the Sanskrit word hutam. And nobody knows this because nobody knows Sanskrit, because nobody has been told, because of the period of colonization. So the first word to know is that Bhagavan does not translate to the English word God. There is no word in English for Bhagavan, but Bhagavan means that being who has the 6 bhagas, beauty, wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, and generosity, to an unlimited degree. Van, one who possesses the bhagas unlimitedly. That is by far the most important word. And it is Bhagavan Shri Krishna who appeared 7,000 years ago and gave us the Bhagavad Gita as the user's manual for Kali Yuga. Great question. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
One more question is there related to, the question is like this: how Bharat and its citizens, with the right kind of leadership that we have at present, can lead the world in the direction of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? to stop the mutual sufferings, greed, ridiculous expansion of artificial boundaries, etc. in the different nations.
You know the word, it's acharya. Acharya doesn't just mean teacher, it means one who teaches by their personal example. So what we need to see are role models. We need to see people showing the Namaste culture around the world. In many ways, this is just like high five, low five, there are handshakes all around the world. This is the yogic handshake. This reminds everyone who they are, how they're seen. You're an Atma. You're an immortal being. Like myself, you're here visiting. I show you respect. So this process is what this online session is about, that we can do this. So now we can look around the world and say to every civilization, congratulations on getting this far. Now let's find a way to live together on Matabhumi without destroying each other. Let's get rid of all of these weapons of mass destruction. And why don't we turn technology into a benefit of mass instruction? But that's what you're doing, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I so honor the fact that you're using the technology to do just what we're doing right now. So that is the next step in the process, that it reaches out to everyone and that everyone teaches by example, by how they live, by what they eat, by what they invest in, by all of those things, and ultimately by how we interact with one another in a way so that we don't want to destroy the planet and each other. That's the next challenge. Diversity, democracy, but also Veda.
One question is on some insights about yoga and Western psychology along with Eastern psychology. Can you please give some insight about yoga and Western psychology along with Eastern psychology?
Yes. It was only a few years ago that I understood the irony of this. When I went into the ashram at age 23, 1969, my guru said, we humans are just like a butterfly. We go through stages, and first we're a caterpillar. The word caterpillar means cater and pillage. It just means eat, 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 take, 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 take. The first stage of the human is just to take. Then it becomes a pupae. Then it becomes a pupil. It has a cocoon and it becomes introspective. Now you may be thinking, what has that got to do with psychology? He's not even answering the question. Well, the word psychoanalysis was invented in English by Sigmund Freud. And the word Suke, as it turns out, is the Greek goddess of the butterfly. And the butterfly is what Freud said, psychoanalysis. And this is the same thing that my guru said. But he didn't get it from Freud, he got it from the Vedas. That psychoanalysis is freeing the butterfly. That's what Freud said. The psychologists of the Western world simply took knowledge from India during colonization and invented a science called Suke, Suke logia. the goddess of the butterfly. That's what psychology actually means. That's how ignorant we are of these origins because of the colonization through the English language. So when I first went in the ashram, my guru said to us, being a yogi is going from caterpillar to butterfly. Sigmund Freud said, psychology is removing the veils that obstruct us from seeing and freeing the butterfly. So psychology is just yoga that doesn't admit where it came from. And it is freeing the butterfly. But yoga is precisely that. Suke logia still doesn't know the meaning of the word. Ask any psychologist, they won't know it means freeing the butterfly. But the Veda knows that. From caterpillar to butterfly, our Atma goes through the process of manifesting here, having a body, realizing we're not the body, under the instruction of a guru, a psychologist, and then we free the butterfly and the Atma achieves moksha. Excellent question.
There is a question from Abhay. Abhay, you can ask the question directly. I think you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, I will ask Kumar Jyoti Nandi, if you are here, I will unmute you and you can ask the question that you have posed here.
Thank you, sir, for this lecture. Sir, my question, I am from architecture background. So I wish to know that is there any relation between yoga and designing an habitat? Because when we see Vastu Purusha Mandala, there the Vastu Purusha is represented in a yogic position. So from that insight, I wish to know whether you have come through of anything like that this yogic position has anything relation between the habitat design or not. Sir,
I didn't hear you clearly say what the position was.
Sir, the yogic position of Vastu Purusha in Vastu Purusha Mandala. Hello, sir, is it audible?
I couldn't understand you, sorry.
Okay.
I think, let me just frame the question for you, Kumar.
Okay.
So what he is asking is that there is a Vastu Purusha Mandala. There the Vastu Purusha is represented in a yogic posture. So since this is related to habitat design, so how the yoga and habitat design corresponds to each other?
All right.
Your insights on that.
All right. Vastu is a sister science to Jyotish. And all of this is in the context of the Samkhya that we discussed, of the doshas and the gunas and all of these categories. And while we're mentioning that, it's important to say that Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, at the various doshas that give us our capabilities as Kshatriya, as someone who can protect, protector, professor, producer, provider. Those four categories of work are not castes. They're actually natural inclinations in a body that were discovered while it was being educated so that it could be educated to the skill set that it is most appropriately made for. So if you're Pitta, if you're a fire-based being, then you're meant to be a protector of some kind. If you're kapha and you're closer to Matabhumi, then you're more likely to be involved in keeping the material realm in order. So these different categories are not by birth in a family, they're by ability in a person. And Jyotish sees that ability. And Vastu sees the same thing in nature, sees the terrain, the devas, literally sees the devas and devis in action. So all of these Vedic sciences are the sciences of cooperation with the Ritam, of cooperation with nature. And these categories were categories of people who were both capable and enthusiastic to work inside of Prakriti in a particular way. This was the Varna ashram Dharma system. So each department had someone maintaining it, and your working in a department was because it was compatible with your disposition, not your family or not your genetics, but the behavioral characteristics that you embodied. So then you could be a teacher, you could be a professor, a protector, a producer, or a provider of services. All of these categories of analyzing the departments of nature and seeing them in ourselves as humans, and then working together in Dharma to keep the world working and functioning optimally. This is the Vedic civilization. And each of these sub-science departments are an important part of its revival. And this is what's coming back in the Vedic Renaissance. So Vastu is one of those sciences that's also talking to the devas, just as Jyotish is, and Vasta Samudrik, looking at the hand. All of these sciences are just showing us the all-pervasiveness of the divine intelligence and of the Devic intelligences and of the ultimate supreme intelligence and how we can work cooperatively with them. Excellent question.
Okay, so I will pose some questions from my end, like summing up your talk and whatever you are saying during this time. So just now you were mentioning that devas and devis and the divine intelligence. So the intelligence, the divine intelligence, the source of everything in yoga, this is realized to be sentient or conscious. So we are like interacting with a conscious entity out there, which is in an energy form or some even higher, subtler energy form. However, the modern science does not see energy in this way. So, is there any way that the modern science could revise their understanding of energy and could understand it in this aspect as conscious in nature, and then the entire science could work around in that and understand it in the Vedic way? Is there any, do you see any possibility in that direction?
My first response to that question is that there really is no such thing as modern science. They're just a group of people that are poking around inside of Prakriti and trying to understand how to manipulate it and use it. Some of them sincere, some of them not so much. The sincere ones will listen to the ancient sciences that have been studied for so very long in the Vedic culture and civilization. And they will, one at a time, find their way in each of those sciences. These things that we're discussing all, again, rest upon the scientific language of Sanskrit, the ultimate scientific language. So if somebody tells me they're a scientist, I say, have you studied Sanskrit? And if they say no, I say, then you're still an illiterate scientist because you haven't studied the ultimate programming language. It's not a matter of religion. Please don't tell me that's religion. That's linguistics. That's the most perfect language on the planet. And if somebody says they're a scholar, but they don't know that, then they should take a year or two to study it under a teacher who's appropriate to teach it to them. This isn't a chauvinistic view of a religious person. This is a factual scientific statement that the scientists should know by now, that Latin and Greek are degraded forms of Sanskrit, and that Sanskrit preceded them, and that therefore science as we know it started in the country we now politically call India, in Bharata. So these things should become everyday knowledge because there's no refutation of them. There is no alternative. There is no other culture that has a language that is more perfect than Sanskrit. So once again, I'm going to just say that. Then the very idea that wireless communication with the entire cosmos is possible through Sanskrit, that is advanced science. It's not religion. And it rests upon the science of getting the individual inhabiting a body to the point that their perception is so reliable that they can have direct perception of what no scientific equipment is capable of measuring. And that is a direct relationship. I might as well say to you, have you dated any nice robots lately? And you say, what do you mean? They can't date. They're not human. They don't have an atma. Yes, exactly. So science thinks that having an atma and talking about the atma is religion. And as long as science thinks that, science doesn't have authority. Science is a grade school person, ill-educated, who only looks at matter to manipulate it and doesn't even recognize the most perfect language on our planet. So for me, who come in from the outside, I went through these processes of discovery. I was taken through them by the acharyas that I met who instructed me. And I only know this because of them. But now that I know it, I can point to the civilization I was born in and say, look, quit being stubborn and not paying attention to what's going on here. We've just received the gift of the greatest language on the planet, and you're ignoring it. You're building nuclear weapons instead of getting to the nucleus of the problem. So you can't talk that way because you're still recovering from colonization. But I am too. I decided not to be one, not to be a colonizer. And now it's time that the entire academic world, so-called, stand up together and go, sorry, we've been ignoring all of this. That momentum got started some time ago. And we thought it was religion, not science. So what I'm going to end with in this question is, and thanks for the question, that vibratory connection to the universe and beyond is the basis of the science of the Veda. And I'm sure with scientific equipment, we can measure the changes in our physiology, chanting mantras and chanting different mantras and being in different states of awareness because of that connection via the vibration. But all of that is science. So you shouldn't again say, my Hindu religion. It's not a religion. Did you know that the word religion is from re ligare? And re ligare means ligaments. The word religion means ligaments. That's all it means, bound by ligaments. So the Catholic Church made some rules and said, you're bound by those rules, and called that a religion. Well, guess what? I'm not bound by your rules. I'm a jnani, I'm a yogi, I'm inquiring, I have gurus, I have a Sanskrit language, and it's far beyond Latin and Greek, which are just degraded forms of it. This is the revolution. It's decolonizing English, decolonizing all the translations of the Vedic texts like the Bhagavad Gita. I started with that one because it's the user's manual. But next is all of them. Take out God, take out sin, take out heaven, take out hell, take out all those colonizing words that impose one lifetime religious worldview on the Vedic Vidya. Stand for the Vedic Vidya as the most scholarly edifice of learning on the planet. No competition. Bring that forward. Academia should bring that forward correctly. If they don't, they have a hidden agenda to not bring it forward. And this, of course, is what's been going on. Is there are a lot of hidden agendas competing behind the scenes, not saying what they're really doing, subverting the real understanding of the culture of India. So this is the next step. What we're doing today, I'm so proud to be a part of it. This is the next step in the revolution, which is actually a Renaissance revolution, not a violent revolution. It's a rebirthing of the culture. So great question. Thank you very much.
Yes, I will have the last question here to you. As you are saying about this science, which is in the Vedas, that makes one's capability to enhance in that way that one can connect with the far sources of the universe and understand them. So to raise one's ability to that extent, the tools and technologies that we have, one of that is yoga that is being proposed. What are the other ones that you suggest? The entire, like it is a suite of tools like yoga, Sanskrit, and what else is there that one needs to invest their time and practice these things in order to enhance their own capabilities as a human being.
Bahudam Jadmanamante, Yadavan Mam Prapadyate, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. We have to go from Duratma to Mahatma. We have to have a longer worldview than matter. After all, the whole point of yoga is that we're trapped within matter, within Prakriti. So let's call it what it is. Everything here is temporary. The question of the hour is, are you then? Because if you are, then go home. You're game over. What's the point? If you only have one lifetime, then there's no point to it. It's pointless, unfair, cruel. There's no optimism in that viewpoint at all. One ridiculously short, futile, controlled by fools lifetime. That's what most people have, if that's what you believe. If you want to give them back their dignity, the first thing you say is, look, first, you can't die. That's why you don't want to. Second, you're an immortal being. You're here visiting. I honor you for that. Now let's try to see what we can do to come back to that worldview, to live up to that. Do you have to? No, you have as many lifetimes as you want. But is it useful? Is it helpful? Does it explain something? Yeah, it explains why you don't want to die, dummy. Listen, why don't you want to die? It's just a simple question. Which part of you doesn't want to die? Oh, the part that can't. Well, then there's your answer. And the part that can't is called an Atma. And what did it get called in English? An atom. And what was it called in the Bible? Adam and Eve. Jiva Atma. It's just twisting the Sanskrit language into Greek, into Aramaic, into this, into that. It's twisting the conversation without asking the most important question, which is the existential question. If I only have one lifetime, why am I wasting it doing this dumb job that I have? If you're really practical about it, this is the viewpoint that makes you Mahatma. Maha-Atma simply means an Atma who sees the big picture. If you're Duratma, game over, no more questions. I can predict your future perfectly. You'll work at a dumb job, you'll make a little bit of money, you'll eat, sleep, mate, and defend, you'll get buried or cremated. And while we're at it, why did people get buried in a nice suit and formaldehyde inside their bodies so that their their corpse lasts longer than they do because they're gone. That's a completely ignorant, insane practice. We buy real estate and keep formaldehyde-laced corpses in the ground as long as possible. What an insane world. Instead of getting rid of the 5-element body, you don't need it anymore, knowing that the person can't die, saying you'll miss them, and have a nice journey where you're going next. We've got to become Mahatma, or we will be a small-minded planet destroying itself. Great question. Thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey, so many thanks for your lecture and all the questions that the participants have asked. So let us close this session by conveying our vote of thanks. At the very first, we thank Sri Jeffrey Armstrong for accepting our invitation and adjusting his usual routine to make time for this lecture. We understand the time difference that is between India and Canada, and in spite of that, he has been generous to accommodate our requests. I am sure the lecture would have given a lot of takeaways to the audience. Coming to the audience, we must extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the overwhelming support we have obtained from them for our lecture series, with the registration mark has crossed over 1200. The success of the lecture series cannot be possible without your overwhelming support. We thank our respected director, Professor K.K. Pant, for generously accepting our request to be chief guest to this inaugural session and sharing his insightful thoughts with us. We also thank our Dean Academic Affairs, Professor Apurva Kumar Sharma, for his constant support in our efforts and sharing his thoughts as honored guest to this session. We must thank Professor Anil Gaurishetty for his able leadership to the IKS Committee and supporting the Science of Yoga lecture series. It has been based on his initial idea that the whole series was conceptualized and finally has come to the execution. In that regard, we cannot but thank enough the relentless work by the IKS volunteers in making the lecture series come to fruition. From managing emails and WhatsApp groups for communicating with registered participants to setting up this online session and the YouTube Live, there had been plenty of background work and immense support by the volunteers. No academic program can be executed without a team of passionate volunteers behind them. Of special mention, I must name Mridul for coordinating all the volunteers, Shruti and Abhay for managing the WebEx and YouTube links, Rohan and Angelika for managing emails and WhatsApp. Also, I must specially mention Raghudev for creating the beautiful invocation video, lending his own voice in the recitation and his artistic creativity behind making the video. We also thank the various IIT Roorkee authorities and offices who had always been available to solve our problems and extend their support in organizing the lecture series. Apologies to anyone whom I may have missed, but our heartfelt thanks extends to one and all who came together to make the event a success. Thanking again our esteemed speaker for sharing his knowledge and insights with us. I hope our relationship continues. With this, I declare the session closed. Our next session is on 4th July, for which communication will be sent to all in due time. Thank you again. Thank you, Jeffrey, and have a good day. If you are here with us, we have invited you for dinner, but sadly you are not here physically. So have a good day and have a good night to all of us who are here in India.
Thank you so much, Soham. It was a privilege to be with you. Have a wonderful day, and thank you, and keep up the wonderful work that you're doing. Pranams.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much.
we have your support in our venture in the coming days as well.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.